I don't think the Boston Celtics are ready for anything that the Mavericks can throw their way. Well, that aged well. What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to this week's installment on The Lake Show, and I really appreciate you all making me a part of your day again. And yeah, 2 weeks ago, I made my NBA Finals prediction between the Boston Celtics and Dallas Mavericks, and as you could tell from the intro, yeah, that aged real well. So we'll talk a little bit about that later today. So yeah, I have to bite the bullet on that one. I made a terrible prediction when it came to the NBA Finals this year. I have never been a basketball savant. I've never been a basketball know-it-all, but I really thought I had this one down pat, but I guess it wasn't meant to be. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today, among a lot of other topics today. We got a full slate today, but I really appreciate you all making me a part of your day again. It really means a lot, and we're going to start off today by talking about what I mentioned we'd talk about last week is the mental health aspect of for men when it comes to June, obviously it being Men's Mental Health Awareness Month, and we're going to talk about that for a couple minutes to start off the show like I promised, because when I did make my mental health video last week, I left a lot of things out when it came to directly dealing with men and how we, the struggles that we face. And in a lot of ways, it's a lot worse than people think sometimes. But, we're going to talk a little bit about that today. But obviously, you all know I'm a Bucked Up ambassador, so use promo code SHOW32. Get yourself 20% off any and all pre-workout orders at buckedup.com. So let's get started today. Like I said, we have a full slate today when it comes to good, sports content, but we're going to take the first 5-10 minutes to talk about June being Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. Now, everybody knows my story. Everybody knows, what I've been through over the past couple years. And, I'm not beating my own chest saying that I overcame everything. I still have days where I struggle. I have a lot of days where, I wake up and wondering, when are things going to turn around for me? When are things going to finally go in my direction? But I did talk about how I prayed to be in a position just like I am right now, in a better mental state, in a better mindset than I was over the past 5 years dealing with depression and anxiety and overthinking and hopelessness, all those feelings that men really feel to a harsh degree. It's, it does get tough from time to time. It does. But one thing I have always, tried to live by is it's a bad day, not a bad life. No matter what's going on in your life, really put it into perspective in the grand scheme of your life. Over the past couple months, I've been struggling with quite a few personal things, but am I going to... I acknowledge the fact that it bothers me. I'm not going to go into all the details today about personally what I'm going through because, a lot of that stuff just doesn't need to be said on camera or for YouTube to see. I'll probably talk about those later down the line once it's all subsided and once, I have a better grip on how to handle everything that's thrown my way when it comes to the certain situations and aspects of my life that have currently been thrown my way. But I feel like when it comes to men and mental health, the stigma and the notion that men have to tough it out, men have to be strong all the time, no matter what, and not to be vulnerable. I can only agree with that in a very slim aspect when it comes to mental health, because I've talked about it for a long time. The more you bottle everything you've been holding on to up, the more you bottle it up, the more you don't deal with it, the more you don't acknowledge it, the more you don't talk about it, the more you just push it off and hope it goes away on its own, you're going to lose your mind. And that was me 2 years ago. where I did lose my mind. I had no sense of hope when it came to that point in time in my life. I didn't think there was any light at the end of the tunnel. And I feel like that is put on men a lot because men are looked at as the protectors, the providers, the firm foundation of households and income and family. A lot of those aspects are placed on men's shoulders. And I feel like we feel mental health in a lot more ways than other people do. The whole reality is that, we are looked at as protectors, providers, the financial rock, basically just the firm foundation of anything when it comes to like households, families, sometimes even society to an extent. There's a lot of weight put on men's shoulders when it comes to, what we want in life. And I feel like what gets lost in everything, what gets lost when it comes to men's mental health is the fact of the matter is that I feel like it's all relationship oriented and or career oriented. Not really much else. And, relationships are tough. Guys are looked at yet again as the protectors, the providers. We have to be, we can't, the stigma at least is we can't show emotion. We have to be tough all the time. When in reality, the fact of the matter is that, if you just go through life trying to tough it out every single time, I'm not saying that you can't do it, but how often are you going to find yourself overthinking and looking in the rearview mirror? How often are you going to think about the things that you did wrong? How often are you going to think about the things that have consumed you your whole life? Guys feel, the love of someone else like a little bit different. It just, no matter what, like when we start to experience something like that, we never want to let it go, no matter what. And, I'm not saying that doesn't go for women too, but, I can only speak for the men and how, typically we feel. But it feels like almost society as a whole, especially in recent years, society as a whole, also, there's so many pressures on when it comes to men's shoulders. There's so much, on the line for all of our lives that, a lot of times it gets overwhelming. I feel like mainly when it comes to men's mental health, I feel like the general aspect of it, the main problem is the feeling of overwhelming odds. The feeling of not, possibly wondering if you can overcome anything that's thrown your way, or the fact of the matter is that you are constantly wondering and tiptoeing around your emotions and feelings when it comes to maybe wanting a relationship with someone, wanting to find your future wife, girlfriend, whatever it may be, or your career and passion. I feel like society as a whole places so much stress on men's shoulders because, it's almost like society is saying you got to figure out your life right now. Like in the snap of a finger, you have to know what you want to do. You have to have your plan out, your future planned. You have to have this, that, and the other in order to be defined as successful. When it comes to money, if anybody on this planet looks me in the eye and tells me that money defines your success in life, I'm going to tell you you're full of it. I'll tell you you're a blatant liar. Money doesn't define success. Money is a consequence of hard work. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. Money's a consequence. Because in all honesty, if currency wasn't a thing, we'd all be rich. Okay? That's the reality of it. Now, am I saying money's good to have? Yes. I'm not saying that being financially stable and able to support a family is not good, because it is good. That's what we need to survive in this world that we have right now. But I talked about it before. If you make it the sole driving force of your life, you're going to be miserable. You're going to take for granted everything. Let's say you make $1 million and your sole purpose in life is to work for money and to get more and more and more, guess what? The second you hit $1 million, you're going to want 2, then 5, then 10, then 100 until you're a billionaire. The point is, you're never going to be satisfied. You are never, ever going to be satisfied if you make money the driving force of your life and the sole reason for your happiness. A lot of men put that stress on their shoulders. Self-inflicting, if I might add, because, we look at ourselves in the mirror, we want more. We want to be successful. We don't want to let the people we love down. We don't want to let our loved ones down. We don't want to let people who criticize us, be right about us. I know I've been in that position many times, and I currently am in a way. I have thought about my life as a whole. Obviously, I'm in a way better spot than I was years ago, but I do wonder all the time, when and if am I ever going to find my future wife? When and if I'm ever going to have a set career path? When and if I can define myself as a success? I don't know when any of that stuff or if any of that stuff will happen. But the biggest lie you can tell yourself if you're a guy is I'm fine. Because I've told myself that before. And that almost resulted in me doing the unthinkable. And this was years ago, not recently at all. But I talked about what I almost did before in my testimony when I was baptized recently. That, that sense of hopelessness will crush you if you allow it to. So that's why I feel like men don't talk about their issues a lot. One, they're afraid of getting criticized. No matter what guy is out there who struggles with anything whatsoever, you've all done it because I have too, and don't tell me you didn't. But the fact of the matter is we hide our feelings because we do not want to be criticized by others, and especially looked at as weak. But I'm telling you this, if you have to express your emotions a certain way in a healthy manner to get them off your chest and to move past all your insecurities and issues that you may feel like you have bottling up inside you, that doesn't make you any less of a man. Because guess what? Nobody on this planet is ever going to tell me that I'm not. Because guess what? I've put in the work when it comes to dealing with everything, and I'm continuing to put in work to better myself from a mental standpoint, from a financial standpoint, from a man of God standpoint, even though I fall short on all those aspects all the time. That's what separates a lot of people, is the fact that there's a sense of drive and purpose. No matter what comes our way, we are going to strive and endure everything to build a better life for ourselves. And for me, I've leaned into that. I don't show them my emotions often, but to just anyone. But to those who are close to you, confide in them. I don't care if it's a friend, a family member, a colleague, anybody. If you trust them and if you are close with them, confide in them. Let them listen. And here's a word of advice for anyone who has a guy in their life, could be a man or a woman, but anybody who has a close friend or a spouse in their life and you think they're struggling, just comfort them and just listen. Sometimes guys just want to be heard. Sometimes guys just want to vent. Because that helps get it off our shoulders. Because, like I said before, the more you bottle stuff up inside, the more it consumes you. And society has put all this pressure on men's shoulders. It's not necessarily our own doing. But I will say some of it is our own doing because we overthink ourselves into a black hole. I've done that multiple times in my life, and, it gets tough. But I'm telling you, all you guys out there, you are not alone in what you're thinking and what you're feeling. You are not alone and you are not the product of your circumstances. You are not the product of that. You are the product of your decision making. How are you going to decide your life moving forward? How are you going to overcome everything? That's stuff you should be thinking about. And I also think you should be thinking about how far you've come. Where were you and where are you going? That's the reality of life itself. Where have you been? What situations were you in? Where are you going? List all the things you have going for you right now. List all the positives in your life. And stop sulking in, the negatives, because I've done that and it does nothing. But really sit back and look at your life from a whole standpoint. Map it out when it comes to your shortcomings and your strengths. Keep those firm foundation strengths. Work on what you need to work on. That's it. Nothing goes away super, super easy. Nothing does. But it goes away in time and hard work. No matter what, you have to put in the hard work. It's necessary. But I'm not saying bottle everything up to the point your head is going to explode. If you have a certain person in your life, confide in them and confide in others. You don't need to be, and I say that to all guys out there, you don't need to be Mr. Tough Guy 24/7. I'm sorry, that stigma gets very, very old. And you see all these gurus online and everything like that. You see all these gurus out there saying, if you're a man, you can't show your feelings because people are going to judge you and this, that, and the other. I don't give a shit. Sorry for cursing, but any guy out there who may claim themselves as a successful man, but in reality will berate other men for the way they feel inside, that just shows a lot about their character. Don't get discouraged because every guy on this planet feels the weight and pressure of the world we live in when it comes to financial responsibility, when it comes to financial freedom, when it comes to, having a future wife someday, kids, family. Guys feel it all. No matter what, guys. I'm speaking to all the guys out there. No matter what happens in this life, you can overcome it. And I'm a firm believer of that. And I will never stop praising that. The fact of the matter is, you are not a product of your circumstances. You are a product of your decision making. How are you going to handle this forward? How are you going to move forward? It's very cut and dry. Fear. Here's something about fear. And I think that holds a lot of men back. The thing about fear is, it's a mile wide, but an inch deep. Fear feels like an ocean. Feels like there's no end in sight. But the second you dip your toes in the water, you're not going to drown. I heard that quote recently, and, it stuck with me a little bit. But I also know I confide in a greater power to help me overcome my issues. And I highly encourage everybody else to do that too. My Lord and Savior has already given me the tools to better my life. It's up to me to use those tools to create a better life for myself and help others along the way. That's why I do what I do. That's why I like producing content, because it gives me a sense of happiness, but I also hope it helps other people think about their life perspective and how they can overcome their issues. Guys, don't ever give up. The struggle does not always last forever. You are loved. You are wanted. You are okay, no matter what. 19 minutes worth. That was crazy. I feel like, I feel like I hit my zone when I talk about that. Now, mental health is a broad aspect for everybody, but I feel like it sometimes hits men a little bit more than most. But I firmly believe that about everyone. No matter what's thrown your way, doesn't matter if you're a guy or a girl, whatever's thrown your way, you're going to overcome it. Just put in the work, because it'll happen eventually. Okay, so I talked about a couple weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, I made a prediction that the Mavericks would beat the Boston Celtics in 5 games. No, 6 games. Well, in Game 5, the Boston Celtics won 106-88, clinching the Boston Celtics' 18th championship. The gold standard in the NBA now. I was on the record saying that I didn't think Boston was tested enough. I thought this was the easiest path anybody has had in the Eastern Conference to the NBA Finals in history. But this just goes to show you what depth really means in the NBA. When I watched that entire series, I saw, for the Mavericks at least, I saw Luka and nothing else. Not much help whatsoever. Even Kyrie Irving had a lot of struggles in this NBA Finals. But I also look at it from the aspect of you got Luka, who's a superstar, and you got Kyrie Irving, who's a superstar. But the surrounding cast is just not there. They're all young. They weren't built for the moment yet. I feel like the Dallas Mavericks as a 5 seed have, they overachieved a little bit. They really did. I don't know necessarily. Maybe this was just the best timing for Boston. Maybe it was just time for Boston because I talked about before that year after year after year that Boston Celtics have known nothing but choking in the playoffs and in the NBA Finals, especially 2 years ago when Steph Curry and the Golden State Warriors smacked Boston around in the NBA Finals. I thought after that Boston might not win another championship for a long time, but Brad Stevens moving from coach to the GM spot, moving to the front office, really surrounding Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown with quality, good players. They reaped the benefit. I never thought Jason Tatum was the guy, really. I feel like that the spotlight was just too bright for him in some aspects. Jaylen Brown, same thing in a way. But I think Brad Stevens looked at this entire team and realized that, okay, we have the pieces we need. Now we just need to add a good supporting cast. That's why they got Porzingis. That's why they got Derek White. That's why they got Al Horford. Boston had depth. That's why they added Drew Holiday. Guys with tenure in the league. Guys who don't mail it in on the defensive end. They're a deep team. Are they a great team? I don't know. They're great for right now. They were great enough to win now. So, all reality is I was completely off when it comes to Dallas and Boston in the series. I honestly thought the Mavericks, I thought they were tested more in the West, but I guess that doesn't really matter when you can only rely on 2 guys for your entire offense, when the rest of your team is a bunch of young guys and can't guard the firepower of Porzingis, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Derek White, Drew Holiday, Al Horford. Just Boston had depth, and they showed out, and rightfully so, crowned this year's NBA champions, winning their 18th, and now banner number 18 will go up in the rafters in Boston. Now we're going to transition to the opposite side of Boston. We're going to talk a little bit about Luka Doncic. I've been saying for a while now that Luka, I feel like by the end of his career, he might have a championship. I don't know. But he will be one of the best scorers that the league has ever seen. He will be in top 5 in points scored of all time. He might one day even rival LeBron James if he plays as long as LeBron has, of course, and barring any injuries. But when it comes to just shot-making ability, Luka Doncic is up there with the best in the NBA. It's between him and Nikola Jokic when it comes to people who can just get a bucket whenever. But there's a reason that guys like Nikola Jokic win championships. Nikola Jokic, while he's an offensive spectacle, he's a great rebounder, and he's easily the best passing big man in the entire NBA, and that's not even close. Amazing shot, gets others involved, and does not mail it in on defense. That's why he's a 2-time MVP, and that's why he's an NBA champion. When you look at Luka, I see a lot of Carmelo Anthony in Luka. Considered the guy, but is mainly just a scoring threat. Now, he can dish out the ball to others and get other people involved more. He did that, especially in Game 2, where he had 11 assists. But Luka needs the ball in his hand. It shows in this series because, he was a scoring machine. But at the end of the day, that did nothing for the Mavericks. That helped them in one game to beat Boston in Game 4. They only won one game in this series when it comes to the big two in Dallas, Luka and Kyrie. But when Kyrie struggled, it was all on Luka Doncic's shoulders. But the problem with Luka, when it comes to ball-centric guards that constantly need the ball, they always need the final shot. They always need the ball in their hands to be effective. Luka is not a defensive player. Luka mails it in on defense. I've watched it in the series. The effort is just not there on the defensive side. It sure as hell is there on the offensive side. But the problem is all ball-centric guards in the NBA. From years on, throughout the years in the NBA. Kobe Bryant had this a little bit early on in his career until he started trusting other players to make shots. So he realized he didn't have to have the ball in his hand. That's why Kobe Bryant ended up winning 2 more championships after Shaq left, because he finally trusted other people. He did not have to be the main guy shooting the ball at the end of games and everything. Now, he was easily the best Laker, without question, on the floor. But it says something when your superstar who can make that final shot, can win you the game on any given night. But when that superstar confides in other players, in his teammates, to deliver, you're just an unstoppable force at that time. Luka has not learned that yet. It doesn't matter if it's Luka Doncic, Carmelo Anthony, Russell Westbrook, Derrick Rose. A lot of those guys were great at getting buckets, but not necessarily great at elevating others, especially when it comes to I really do see a lot of Carmelo Anthony in Luka. Guys who, ISO players who could just drive the lane, score at the rim, or can do a step-back 3 or a mid-range jumper. These guys, they have their place in the NBA. But I don't think necessarily you can build your franchise around them, because the same way with Carmelo Anthony is the same way with Luka Doncic. They both mailed it in on defense. They weren't defensive players. They couldn't care less about defense, in all honesty. I watched Carmelo Anthony for a long time. He was one of my favorite players. But now, as I've grown and just getting older, I see what works in the NBA and I see what doesn't work in the NBA. Ball-centric guards who constantly need the ball in their hands and don't play any defense. James Harden, Russell Westbrook, Derrick Rose, Carmelo Anthony, now Luka Doncic. These guys are great players. They will go down in history as some of the all-time great players in the NBA. But if you look at all the other ball-centric guards throughout the years, Carmelo Anthony, one of the best scorers of all time, no championships. James Harden, one of the best scorers of all time, no championships. Derrick Rose, for a time before he got injured, one of the best scorers, one of the best upcoming scorers in the NBA, no championships. Russell Westbrook, no championships, ball-centric guard, not necessarily known for his defense. I will say Russell Westbrook is the best defensive player out of all the lists I'm making right now. And then Luka, great scorer, mails it in on defense, no championships. All these guys have in common, they did not try on the defensive end, and they don't really get others involved on their teams. Russell Westbrook is possibly one exception because he has the highest motor he had the highest motor in the NBA for the longest time, and he didn't really mail it in on defense. James Harden sure did, but Russell Westbrook always had the effort there and the energy and the passion. That's why I liked Russell Westbrook, because even though he was not necessarily a defensive stalwart, he was still playing as hard as he can until the next whistle. Russell Westbrook had no off switch. when it came to his competitive edge and his, high motor. Russell Westbrook was different early on in his career, obviously. But moral of the story, all these guys, ball-centric guards who constantly need the ball in their hands, who mail it in on defense and don't get others involved really, they don't win championships. They win scoring titles. They win, accolades. Derrick Rose won an MVP. Russell Westbrook won an MVP. Luka Doncic possibly will win an MVP in the future. Ball-centric guards who need the ball in their hands constantly, they don't win championships. So where does this leave Luka? I don't know. We'll see later down the line. Do I think he ends up getting a championship? Possibly. Depends how the West shapes up, because other teams will be on the rise in the West, just like usual. The Timberwolves still with Rudy Gobert, Cat, Anthony Edwards, Mike Conley. I think Mike Conley's on the Timberwolves. No, he might be on the Grizzlies. I don't remember. But either way, teams in the West, the Nuggets will be back. The Lakers will be back. The Thunder will be back. This might have been Dallas's best chance, possibly. Depends what they do in free agency. But their team is still young, so it does not shock me still that they did lose the NBA Finals in this fashion in 5 games. Maybe a little shocked. I thought it would have been more competitive, 6 or 7 games. But either way, moral of the story, you see Boston, they had depth, and all those players, even Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, they trusted one another to deliver shots when it mattered. Luka needed the ball in his hand, surrounded by a younger team. Kyrie Irving not necessarily playing well. Luka Doncic, at the end of the day, he's a bucket getter, but not necessarily a guy I feel you can win championships with unless he comes to that own conclusion. Like Kobe Bryant started trusting his other teammates. He reaped the benefit and won 2 more titles with the Lakers. I think Luka will eventually have to start trusting other players and trying to make them better. Otherwise, Luka Doncic will just be like Carmelo Anthony, Russell Westbrook, James Harden, all those other great guards throughout the years and forwards who were great scorers, but no championships. So eventually, Luka, you have to be honest about Luka and where he currently is in his NBA career. All right. So recently, the Los Angeles Lakers signed J.J. Redick to a 4-year deal to be their next head coach. How is this going to play out? I have no idea, because I, for the longest time, have been hammering the Lakers and hammering the NBA in general because it's so player-oriented and it's so player-driven that coaches are never given the benefit of the doubt when things don't go right. I look at guys like Mike Budenholzer, who won an NBA championship in Milwaukee and was their coach for the longest time I can remember. They drove him out of town. Frank Vogel for the Lakers, he won a championship too, ousted. Monty Williams for the Suns, ousted. Frank Vogel again with the Suns, ousted. NBA coaches are always made the fall guys for when things don't go wrong. Darvin Ham, ousted by the Lakers after last year. Darvin Ham got to a conference championship just 2 years ago against the eventual champion Nuggets. Now, they were swept, I get it, but they still made the conference finals. And now this year, they make the playoffs again, but get bounced by Denver in 5 games. Okay, I talked about before, is it Darvin Ham's fault that Rui Hachimura, Austin Reeves, D'Angelo Russell, is it his fault that those guys just can't hit shots? Is it his fault that Rui or Austin Reeves or D'Lo are their third best player on the team? Austin Reeves would be a bench player on the Boston Celtics. So would Rui Hachimura, and so would D'Angelo Russell. That's what separates other teams, is the fact that the Lakers have great 4 and 5 kind of guys or 6 men as starters, while those same guys would be bench warmers and rotational players on other teams, like Boston. So coaches are always made the fall guys when it comes to everything that goes wrong with a team in the NBA. And the JJ Redick signing kind of reminds me, can it be successful? Yes. If the Lakers are going to be patient enough to let JJ Redick, coach that long enough. I don't know how it's going to end up for JJ Redick. I'm hoping that it goes well for him. I really do. He's a smart guy. He's been in the league, I believe he had an 18-year NBA career, and he was a great three-point shooter throughout his career. He was a great team guy and a great leader over his entire NBA career. Doesn't matter what team he was on. He was always looked at as like a leader in the locker room. He's a basketball savant. You can even hear it on all the sports talk shows across America when he's on it. They praise his basketball knowledge. But the second he gets a deal, now they're questioning whether he has the fortitude to do it. I don't think it's a JJ Redick problem. I think it's a management problem and a player problem. LeBron has had his thumb pressed on this organization for a long time, since he got to LA. But at the same time, the front office for the Lakers is just god-awful. I don't trust the Buss family. I don't trust Jeannie Buss whatsoever to make good decisions. I never trusted Rob Pelinka. I never trusted those guys to have patience to let someone come in and start to build a culture with the players in order to produce NBA championships. The Lakers are just a very impatient team. This is not necessarily... I see a scenario possibly playing out like Steve Nash when he went to Brooklyn. In all fairness to Steve Nash, that was a dumpster fire of a hire, looking back on it. But at the same time, I don't necessarily think it was all Steve Nash's fault when it comes to everything that happened in Brooklyn. You had an injured KD, so he didn't even play his first year coming into Brooklyn because he was injured. He didn't even play the first year as a Brooklyn Net when he signed the contract with the Nets. You had Kyrie Irving, who at that time was a head case and was all over the place mentally, and was just not a great team player when it comes to, being an NBA guy. Just being the guy on, playing in the NBA. He was all over the place in the media, just saying what he wanted. It was just a lot of controversy surrounding Kyrie Irving at that time. You had Ben Simmons, and who, all honesty, is probably the worst superstar in NBA history. I'm sorry. Ben Simmons... I think he's 6'5", 230-some pounds or 220 pounds. I saw this guy literally never take a jump shot. This guy refused to play injured. And I'm not saying guys should play through injury. I'm not saying that. But you could tough it out a little bit. Ben Simmons is the weakest superstar that the NBA has ever seen. He can pass. He can dribble. He can get other players involved. This man cannot shoot. This man has never worked on his jump shot. If Ben Simmons had a jump shot, he would be a top 10 player in the NBA because the talent was already there. Not anymore. Ben Simmons not playing through injury. Ben Simmons showing up on the sidelines for Nets games, blinged out and all his jewelry and everything all those years ago. People were questioning whether he was actually devoted to the game or not. Ben Simmons is the weakest superstar in NBA history. I don't care what anybody says. But, and I'm not the only one who said that, but looking back on everything, is it Steve Nash's fault for all those head cases going on in Brooklyn? Just like, is it going to be JJ Redick's fault when he doesn't have much to work with other than... he has LeBron and AD. Anybody in the NBA would kill to have those two players on their team. But you cross your fingers and hope that D'Angelo Russell, Rui Hachimura, or Austin Reeves can deliver for you. Is JJ Redick going to be made the fall guy when that happens? I don't know. I think it was a good hire for the Lakers if the Lakers had patience. But the Lakers have proven time and time again that they do not have patience whatsoever. So time will tell. In the future, we'll see if it was a good hire. I personally like the hire. I've always liked J.J. Redick, but I can't help but get the notion out of my head that it might turn into another Steve Nash to Brooklyn sort of situation later down the line. All right, 2 more topics. I wanted to talk about this one thing. Well, 2 things. And this has to do with the Philadelphia Eagles and Jalen Hurts. So recently, throughout the past couple weeks, as we all know, the Pittsburgh Steelers got rid of Kenny Pickett, and he went to the Eagles. Well, there has been recent reports that former Steelers quarterback Kenny Pickett has been outperforming Jalen Hurts in OTAs in practice. This is the funniest thing I've ever seen. But at the same time, could this have been predicted? Kenny Pickett has always played good in practice. He did that in Pittsburgh when he gave us false hope. He did great in practice. He did great in the preseason. He did great in OTAs. Kenny Pickett was an off-season performer. He was an off-season savant. But when it came to the regular season, nothing. But I find it interesting that it's actually happening with Jalen Hurts, who many in the NFL claim as a superstar in this league, a superstar quarterback. I don't necessarily think superstar is the correct word. I think superstar is a Patrick Mahomes. 3-time Super Bowl champion, 2-time NFL MVP, that sort of stuff. So I looked at Jalen Hurts' stats from 2022 to 2023. If it'll load for me, hopefully. Well, okay, here we go. I got it. But Jalen Hurts has always relied on his coaching schemes and his coach's ability to get every ounce of talent out of him in a way. When Shane Steichen was there, when Shane Steichen was the offensive coordinator for the Philadelphia Eagles, that is when Jalen Hurts really shined. That is when... Sorry, guys. I was trying to get the stats up again. There we go. Okay. So either way, the problem with Jalen Hurts is that I feel like he was a big-time product of what Shane Steichen was able to do with his offensive schemes and offensive play design. So if you look at 2022, this is the year that Jalen Hurts and the Philadelphia Eagles went to the Super Bowl with Shane Steichen as offensive coordinator. Jalen Hurts completed 66.5% of his completions. He had 3,701 yards. He had 22 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 101 passer rating, one of the best in the NFL. Now transition to last year, 2023, Shane Steichen left for the Colts. And you're going to see Anthony Richardson, who is a raw quarterback, reap the benefit of that. But, moral of the story, looking back to last year when it comes to Jalen Hurts. In 2023, he had damn near 80 more pass attempts, putting him at 538. He had 3,858 yards passing. So that went up a little bit. A 65.4 completion percentage. Dipped slightly. But here's the issue. Here's the big issue of it. He had 23 touchdowns, one more than the year prior. He had 15 interceptions, 9 more than the year he was with Shane Steichen, and an 89.1 passer rating, middle of the pack. So, when it comes, I feel like coaching is a very underrated thing. Would Pat Mahomes be the same quarterback if Andy Reid wasn't his play caller? Would Matthew Stafford have won a Super Bowl ever in his life without scheming and play design from Sean McVay? Is Brock Purdy the same quarterback without Kyle Shanahan's offense? Now, it matters who you're surrounded with in the NFL, but I don't think anything has a bigger impact on a quarterback as his offensive coordinator and or head coach. Whoever's in his ear constantly, whoever is giving him play call designs, and whoever is just giving him the plays in general. But it shows right here. His decision-making has gotten worse. His passer rating has gotten significantly worse. Completion percentage down slightly. Interceptions up. I think that's a product of Shane Steichen leaving. We're going to see. Now they have a great team. Philadelphia is loaded, just like the San Francisco 49ers. They're loaded. But the longer that Shane Steichen is away from Jalen Hurts, is it possible that Jalen Hurts is going to continuously get worse? Nick Sirianni needs to figure this out real soon. I forget who they hired as their OC, but I feel like if it's not of the level of Shane Steichen, like the year they went to the Super Bowl, I don't think Philadelphia is going to amount to much when it comes to postseason play. And I don't think Jalen Hurts is nearly as good as maybe we all thought he originally was. Now, one final thing. I talked about this last week when Jacksonville signed Trevor Lawrence to a 5-year extension worth $275 million, and how it sets a dangerous precedent for the NFL and quarterbacks. Now, there was recent talk about having a separate cap for everybody else and a separate cap for quarterbacks. I don't know how well that would work. I don't know. So if I'm the Dallas Cowboys, I have 3 contracts that need to be signed real soon. CeeDee Lamb, one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. Micah Parsons, arguably the second or third best pass rusher in the NFL. And Dak Prescott, the middle-of-the-road quarterback. Here's the problem. That precedent that Jacksonville just set, Trevor Lawrence is a good quarterback. I've always thought he was a good quarterback. But is he a $55 million quarterback a year? Kind of good? Absolutely not. Jacksonville, giving Trevor Lawrence all this money, that sets a dangerous precedent because Dak Prescott is probably licking his chops right now at the contract that he can get with the Dallas Cowboys. And I think because it's Dallas, they always screw something up. I personally think that Dallas will end up giving in and paying Dak Prescott more money than he deserves. Now, I'm not against people getting their money in the NFL. I'm not against that. But when you look at it, the biggest way to ensure your team does not win a Super Bowl is you give a good quarterback great quarterback money. If you start paying guys like Trevor Lawrence, who I think has upside to be one of the best in the league, if you start paying Dak Prescott great quarterback money for just being okay, you're never going to make a Super Bowl because you are going to alienate CeeDee Lamb, who is going to have to take less money because you gave Dak all of it, or he's going to screw off to another team. Same thing with Micah Parsons. If you don't pay Micah Parsons, guess what? Your defense is not nearly going to be as good as it is with Micah Parsons. He's that kind of game changer. But if you pay Dak Prescott $60 million a year, you're not going to have any money for Micah Parsons, for arguably one of the best defensive pass rushers and defensive players in the entire league. Found 2 foundational pieces when it comes to success in the NFL. A star wide receiver, a.k.a. a weapon, could be a running back, tight end, wide receiver, whatever. You have a star wide receiver, a star pass rusher. You always need a star pass rusher, someone who can get after the quarterback and get after the run game. But you're going to end up paying Dak Prescott great quarterback money when he's just an okay player. He has 2 playoff wins in his 8-year career. Probably 2 playoff wins in 9 years now going into this NFL season. So what is Dallas going to do? I don't know. But knowing Dallas, they're going to screw it up somehow and probably give Dak Prescott $60 million a year, making him the highest paid quarterback. I don't know, but it sure as heck would not be the right decision. And that's going to wrap it up this week on The Lake Show, everyone. Be sure to like, subscribe, share with your friends, leave some comments down below. I'm your host, Dominic Lakeo. God bless.
I love the chase and the hunt, and I set the pace when I'm running. I always take what I want and I always give it 100. Don't need a bank, no I'm funded. Play the game like it's nothing. I'm always thankful for something. Don't take for granted, stay humble. Now wake up! It's time to look at the enemy. Look in the mirror if he is no friend to me. It's not working out, maybe it's